There have been a lot of coordinators fired, hired, moved up, moved out. Collin Klein being at the very front of this. Now, there were a lot of head coaches here who stayed put in the Big 12, so I don't know if you expect to see a lot of movement in that coordinator role. We won't break down Houston's. They have a new head coach. That was obvious. But for Collin Klein to leave Kansas State, I'm not sure anybody expected that. And the day that he did it, the week that he did it, wasn't the best timing either. Andy Kotelnicki going from Kansas to Penn State, and then Penn State now stealing Kansas OC, showing how good of a program Kansas is, how good of a spot Lance Leipold's in. And then he says, I want Jeff Grimes, because Jeff Grimes may have been bad at Baylor, but I don't think it was Jeff Grimes that was bad at Baylor, because that's weird. It's a guy who's been so good at every single spot, but then he plays for a first-time head coach in Dave Aranda, and things don't go well. It's the first time in his career things have not gone well. I think what Lance Leipold sees, and I've talked to people in the Grimes camp who have said they were surprised. They were happy with how many wonderful offers he got, which again to me shows that Dave Aranda is incompetent and can't hire assistants, which he's fired over a dozen of them. That's not shocking. Now Grimes to Kansas. I think it's a great hire. Look what he did at BYU. A guy who just loves the Big 12, stays in the Big 12, leading one of the best offenses in America at BYU, then winning a Sugar Bowl and a Big 12 championship his first year at Baylor. And from there was handcuffed. His own head coach handcuffed him. And it wasn't just him. It's been Larry Fedora, who was also fired, Ron Roberts, who was also fired. And those guys at Baylor have landed on their feet. Fedora was a GM and head coach in the USFL. Had connections. Pretty good football coach before he was at Baylor. Couldn't coach under Dave Aranda. Not the only one. Eric Mateos goes to Arkansas, a school who's 20th in the country in revenue, plays in the SEC. He's an offensive. He got fired at Baylor to be an offensive line coach in the SEC. Not a bad spot to get fired from. Grimes, who got fired at Baylor, lands on his feet going to Kansas, who's going to compete for a Big 12 championship and has the best quarterback in the league going into next season, and possibly the best running back in the league going into next season. He got fired to get a better job. How about Ron Roberts, that old coordinator, the defensive coordinator at Baylor, who got fired by Dave Aranda to become the DC at Auburn in the SEC and make more money? What I'm seeing right now from a coordinator standpoint, when Collin Klein leaves at Kansas State and everybody thinks the sky's falling, and the sky's really falling in Waco when the head coach keeps firing guys who are getting better jobs after getting fired. Again, what does that say about your head coach? I don't know. I'm not passionate. It doesn't bother me, right? Joe Gillespie out at TCU. Did they get the right guy? I have been screaming for them to fire Kendall Briles. And I know Kendall Briles did not give up 69 points in that game to Oklahoma. That's the last thing we get from Gillespie. My big question with this one. The guy who orchestrated a defense that was good enough to get you to a national championship game where, yes, Georgia did score 65, 66, whatever it was. This is a weird move to make on Sunday, December 10th. Happy Monday, everybody. Why was it yesterday we learned this? Why wasn't there already a jump out to get a DC at TCU? What happened? When was it known that Gillespie was going to have to go? Odd, right? And why wasn't there a change at OC? You know, the Briles thing was already weird. You got Kaz Kazadi there, a guy with the last name Briles. TCU fans didn't like it. You kind of hid him behind his family when you announced him. This was a weird move for that university itself to make, and the offense did not stand out this season. Everybody dealt with a backup quarterback. Almost everybody in the Big 12, 12 of the 14 teams at one point or another had to have a backup quarterback in a crucial spot because of injury or bad performance from a starter. Josh Hoover did fine. He won you that Baylor game. He kept you in it against Oklahoma, but I don't know if I got enough from Kendall Briles that was a good compliment to the defense. I felt like that wasn't complimentary football. It felt like the two were out of sync. What you need, and this is, I usually go back to the default, like 2021 Baylor had a very good ground and pound wide zone offense for a defense that was great when it got solid rest. So your offense takes it slow and steady. Your defense gets good rest. You put a spread offense firing. Here, an example. Jake Spavital to Baylor out of Cal. They hired the Cal OC to come coach at Baylor, who has a pretty bad relationship with a lot of Texas high school coaches because he was the head coach at Texas State, burnt all of his bridges by only recruiting the transfer portal. He just didn't recruit Texas high schoolers. So a lot of Texas high school coaches probably aren't going to send their players to Jake Spavital and Baylor. Neither here nor there. When we talk about on the field, he runs an up-tempo spread offense, which is fun, and kids love it. They run it in high school. They want to do it again in college. But Dave Aranda had the 111th best defense in the country, and now you're telling me the defense is going to be on the field even more? Remember, we talk about compliments with this. Gillespie and Briles, did they complement one another well enough? And I didn't think so, and I thought the Briles might have been the issue there. But no, he's not the one fired. Did TCU fire the right guy? Jeff Lebby out at Oklahoma. Not fired, but to Mississippi State. And same thing Was Lebby a good fit when you talk about complementary football? I didn't think that Lebby's offense was conducive with what Brent Venables is trying to do from a defensive standpoint. Again, there are times where you see like, oh, wow, this was a possession we couldn't go 3 and out in 43 seconds. We needed to run the football, give our defense some chance to rest. And some of these OCs just don't really do that. I think Spavital will be that way at Baylor. So I find it interesting. Some of these poached by the SEC, some of these poached by the Big Ten, I guess. But I'm not worried about the coordinator spot in the Big 12 as much as I am about the transfer portal. I think that has more of a black spot of the conference. The amount of players from the portal who expect to go to the SEC or the Big Ten more so than coordinators getting poached by those two conferences. If you're a coordinator and you get a head coaching job, that's a different thing. But I'm talking coordinators who got pulled out of their Big 12, who got hired from their Big 12 school to go to the SEC or the Big Ten. You have Kansas State, you have Texas A&M. Sure, those are better jobs. But on the whole, I'm not that disappointed with this year's coaching carousel of coordinators, and don't feel like the Big 12 got put in a bad spot. I think Kansas got even better with Jeff Grimes, who was highly touted as one of the best offensive line gurus in the country when he got to Baylor, has been good every stop again but Baylor. Gillespie at TCU, we'll see where that one goes. Spavital at Baylor, I don't think is going to be conducive with that defense. Collin Klein out at Kansas State. Where do they go? What do they do without their legendary golden boy? Kotelnicki gone. Again, I think Grimes will be good. All right. I'm a net neutral. On Big 12 assistants. Come back tomorrow for more Big 12 football and basketball and jazz. This has been It Always Will Be. I'll keep reading. I'll be reading stuff all the time for you guys. Studying and whatnot. Locked on. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Doce Grande.